Hey guys, Filmsuit here. So I just got back from Iron Man 3, and well, it's an improvement over the second one, we could say that much. So, the premise for this one takes place 6 months or so after the events of the Avengers, and Tony Stark, who's still played by Robert Downey Jr., obviously, his life is now in a bit of a rut. Like, he is, let's see here, he's having severe anxiety attacks, which come off as more comical, but we'll get to that later. So yeah, he's coming off at honestly, yeah, he's having a lot of major anxiety attacks, and he can't sleep, so he spends all his spare time building more Iron Man suits, and this has put a strain on his relationship with Pepper. At the same time, what happens is he ends up foolishly attracting the attention of this terrorist called the Mandarin, played by Ben Kingsley, who launches an attack on his house and blows it up, and at the same time kidnaps Pepper, and which forces Stark to go on the run, and he goes hiding in Tennessee, where he plans to rebuild his newest prototype suit and help rescue Pepper, stop Mandarin. Standard comic book movie formula from there. So I don't really want to spoil too much here because it's funny. You wouldn't expect me to say that about an Iron Man movie, considering the first two were very straightforward, but this one has some spoiler material, and I'm not gonna go into a spoiling mood here, or mode, I should say. But I will say this: the movie was good. Like I said, it's an improvement over the second one because I love the first one. That one took me by surprise. I went into that one with low expectations. I went to the second one with high expectations and walked out very disappointed, mainly due to too much going on, not exploring all the interesting characters, etc. The third one, I went in with mid expectations. The trailers thought, okay, it gotta be really good or it could be really bad. So I went in with mid level expectations for this one, and you know, with the reputation of the threequels and superhero movies like X-Men The Last Stand, Spider-Man 3, those two in particular, those movies were awful compared to their predecessors. Now, The Dark Knight Rises, that kind of brought me some hope for the threequel, and even though a lot of people hated that movie, I loved it, obviously. This one, it actually kind of brings hope for the threequel, because first off, Jon Favreau is not the director of this movie. Granted, he did a great job of the first two, but instead he's replaced by someone who I've been a fan of since I was a kid, Shane Black, who wrote Lethal Weapon. He wrote and directed Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and you could tell his style is definitely in the movie. Like, for starters, the movie opens up with Robert Downey Jr. Giving a voiceover like mid movie when you see that shot from the trailers of all the Iron Man suits blowing up, and he says, "Oh wait, I don't want to start at this point. Let's go back." And so it goes back like to a flashback from 13 or 14 years ago, and with Eiffel 65's "I'm Blue" playing, and so yeah, that was cool because that kind of reflected on the opening scene of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, where Robert Downey Jr. kind of had the same voiceover narration. He says, "No, wait, not going to start at this point. Let's go back." And so Shane Black's trademarks are definitely in there. Like, for starters, lots of wit left and right. And actually, in terms of the three Iron Man movies, this is probably the funniest one of all of them. Like, the first two had their hilarious moments, whether it's just a witty one-liner or little slapstick moments with Iron Man working on his suits. Those two movies were funny, but this one truly was the funniest one. Like, there's joke after joke, comical scenario after comical scenario. Even the villains, like Ben Kingsley's character and Guy Pearce's character, Aldrich Killian, they both had comical moments in it too. And yeah, however, it does become kind of an overkill because like some people have complained saying this movie was too funny, and I mean, I wouldn't say. I mean, I could say that my biggest issue with the amount of humor in it was it's misleading. Like I didn't have a problem with all the funny moments once I saw the movie. However, it is very misleading from the trailers when you think you're going to watch one of the darkest Iron Man movies ever. Now, story wise, perhaps this is the most well written and interesting story of the three, just because, like, yeah, the first one is more of an origin movie, and the second one, and yeah, well, the first one was very solidly written. It was very straightforward, very simple. The second one, they try to go big and loud, and they didn't really have a focus, which is what killed the movie for me. Is like there wasn't really a story. It's just little subplots here and there, and that's all it was. The third one here, the story is very well written. I mean, it kind of plays as a bit of a detective story. It also plays as a bit of a buddy comedy, given that it's Shane Black, and like I said, he wrote Lethal Weapon and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, so don't be surprised there that it's kind of a buddy comedy, which I didn't mind at all. I thought the buddy comedy element was pretty cool. And but yeah, it's the least superhero movie of the three. Like, let's see, and that's the other thing is that everyone is complaining about Tony Stark's. It's too much of a Tony Stark movie, and it is a Tony Stark movie, but it's also an Iron Man movie. And I will say that even though people say that Iron Man is not in it enough, the climax redeems that statement right there and puts that statement into the ground when you have Stark hopping between like 20 different Iron Man suits while fighting the villains. That right there makes up for a good hour and 30 minutes without Tony Stark as Iron Man. And what else can be said here? That's good. Yeah, and then Robert Downey Jr., of course. Nothing needs to be said about him. He's awesome in this movie as always. And his story going on where he's like, it was great to see him as most vulnerable. Like the first one, we didn't really see him vulnerable except for in the climax when he has to fight Ironmonger with that first battery that he made that only has like 20% battery or something like that. And that was intense. And the second one, we don't see him vulnerable even though he's supposedly dying in that movie. We still don't feel like that he's vulnerable. This one, he's vulnerable because he doesn't have an Iron Man suit to fight against these assassins who can regenerate themselves and melt things turn things into flames with their hands. Like he doesn't have his Iron Man suit to fight them, and so he has to use his wits and his brain to outmatch super villains the whole time, and that was cool to see. Hang on, one second, please. Now for the negatives. There wasn't really, actually. Oh yeah, I forgot the villains. Yeah, I mean honestly, how hard is it to get a villain right in the Iron Man franchise? Like the first one, I like the Ironmonger. Like I always thought it was a cool character, but Jeff Bridges, you can't cast the dude as a bad guy. It just doesn't work. Iron Man 2, again, great idea for villains. Like you have the very cocky and arrogant rival executive played by Sam Rockwell, who does a great job, but they don't explore him enough. And then you have Whiplash, who's played by a very menacing and evil Mickey Rourke. But again, they don't explore him enough. And on top of that, his motive for targeting Iron Man was very cliche. This one, the third one, the villains. Now again, I have to avoid talking about, avoid going into too much detail. Otherwise, I'm just going to give away spoilers. But they are not interesting villains. I mean, they are, but they aren't. But they're misleading. I'll just say that. Like Guy Pearce's character, he breathes fire. What? Ah! And it's like Tony Stark is fighting a freaking fire-breathing dragon. And on top of that, Guy Pearce's performance was like so bland. I mean, I saw him last summer as the main villain in Lawless, and I loved him in it. Thought, wow, he could play menacing and evil very well. In this, he's not menacing, he's not evil, he's just like the cool and confident, straight-faced Guy Pearce, who could breathe fire. And then Ben Kingsley's character, it is hard to bash on his character considering I thought he was both funny and menacing in this, but I will say my biggest issue with his character, very misleading. Without giving any spoilers, do not expect that evil, deep-voiced psycho terrorist who you think is going to be unstoppable that you see Ben Kingsley play in the trailers. Don't expect that at all. Just saying it. Yeah. It's really hard to say how I feel about this movie, because like I said, I like it more than the second one, and I like it, it's like a step below the first one, but what would have made it surpass the first one is if they had just shapen up the damn villains. Like, 'cause to me, my motto is, a movie is only as interesting as your villain, and that goes to say mostly with superhero movies, action movies, etc. The villain is usually the highlight of the movie. But most of the time, like, obviously when you go up against Robert Downey Jr., that's not the case, but still, like, at least try to do something with the villains for Iron Man 4. Explore them better. Give them more to do. Give them a good actor to cast them in. Like, do all that in one and shape them up, and maybe we'll have a good villain to talk about for Iron Man 4. Yeah, in the meantime, my next review is going to be The Great Gatsby. This Friday. Yeah. This Friday, I am seeing The Great Gatsby. Review will probably be up this Saturday. And you can follow me at Twitter at Filmsuit. Just type that in on Twitter and follow me that way. Thanks a bunch, guys.